Friday in 2020, let's bring in Sucharita Kodali. She's a retail analyst at Forrester Research. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we did see that online retail sales were already doing well before the holidays. So just how important is the holiday shopping season, not just for brick and mortar retailers, but for the retail industry as a whole?
Well, for the retail industry, Q4 is usually an incredibly important time. It always comprises a disproportionately high percent of the overall share, and certainly even for e-commerce retailers, it is disproportionately high. Now, the complicated piece in this pandemic is that a number of the essential retailers that are the ones that are not dependent on Q4 are the ones that have been doing particularly well up to now. And what that means is that those discretionary companies that have typically been most dependent on Q4 really have a make or break season in front of them because of the fact that they just have been in a hole for the last several quarters, and this is their last hope of getting out of it before the end of the year.
So then, given how much is at stake, what kind of in-store promotions are we seeing from some of these major retailers? And will that be enough to draw the sort of large crowds they need to make up that financial shortfall?
Right. Well, there are two things that are working against them. One is that they can't have the crowds in stores, which means that the Black Friday is not going to be as big as they would have hoped. And what that also means is that much of the season's already passed. Their best opportunities and their best hopes for making up the shortfall was in the months of October and November. And even though there were a number of deals, unfortunately, consumers didn't really respond to them in the way that retailers had hoped. The other piece is that inventory was not nearly as much in abundance as it is usually in Q4, in large part because retailers had cut back on orders. They didn't have as much in the way of cash to make these orders earlier in the pandemic, and you have to order retail supplies for Q4 and retail goods often quarters, sometimes nearly almost a year in advance, and there were a lot of cancellations that March and April brought. So with less inventory, you have less opportunity to mark things down, and both of those things are typically going to suggest a pretty lackluster Q4.
So then, what are people primarily buying, and what are some of the most surprising trends you're seeing this year?
Well, we heard that there are definitely the at-home elements. It's anything from, heaters for your outdoor living to fire pits to, of course, anything that is going to help adorn the interior of your home. Often everything from wall furnishings to paint to sofas and pillows. You also see a significant amount of what we'd say comfort wear. So everything from leggings to sweatpants and sweatshirts, to also a lot of the outdoor wear that people can use to stay warm when they have to be outside during the pandemic.
Now, another thing that we usually see at this time of year is, of course, a visit to the mall to go and see Santa. We know that Macy's is doing theirs virtually this year. Others are doing plexiglass face-to-faces. Will families really get on board with this approach, or does it really take the magic out of it?
It does. It's certainly not what people are used to, and it's certainly not what small children will appreciate and really enjoy. But it is what it is, and I think that the entire country has had the entire world really has had so much of a change in behavior, from how they interact with friends and family to how they engage when they go out in public, that this is actually just par for the course. It's an unusual year, but it's something that affects all of us. So it's not a small percent of people that are being singled out.
Now, obviously, this does also roll into Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday. Talk about COVID's impact on small businesses and what's helping them survive in this period.
Well, the companies that have survived, a lot of it has been just getting the awareness out that they're there, they're available, they're open for business. Many of them have shifted and pivoted to e-commerce sales, so they have offered things like curbside pickup or They have allowed consumers to browse their inventory selections online. Small restaurants that have survived have just allowed online ordering. Sometimes they've partnered with companies like DoorDash and Postmates, albeit an expensive alternative. It has been something that has allowed them to keep the lights on. So a lot of it is just trying to pivot where you can and recognizing that consumers often do want to purchase online. They want touchless transactions. And then the hope is that in the next few months, things will pass, vaccines will be broadly distributed, and hopefully companies will be in a position to come out of the hole that these last several months have left them in.